Please, close your eyes for just a moment. Can you hear it? That rhythmic, metallic squeaking of a shopping cart wheel echoing down the wide aisles of the local A&P grocery store. Can you smell the rich, earthy aroma of the coffee grinder at the front of the store, mingling with the crisp scent of freshly printed brown paper bags? Today, we are going to take a slow, comforting stroll down the grocery aisles of 1960s America. We will revisit 20 beloved supermarket foods and the beautiful rituals that came with them, things we have lost to time. And please, stay with me until the very end, because the final memory we will share is one that might just bring a happy, nostalgic tear to your eye. Life simply moved at a different pace back then. Time felt thicker, slower, and incredibly rich. We did not have smartphones to distract us while waiting in line at the checkout counter. Instead, we had conversations. We knew the butcher by his first name, and the cashier always asked about our families. People today might look back and think that because we lacked modern technology, our lives were somehow smaller or poorer. But you and I know the truth. Our days were overflowing with genuine, heartfelt connections. Waiting for Sunday dinner, or anticipating that one special box of cereal your mother finally agreed to buy, taught us the beautiful art of patience. Every trip to the grocery store was an event, a sensory experience filled with bright packaging, neighborly chatter, and the simple joy of bringing food home to the people we loved most. Let us begin our journey with a snack that made us feel like we were reaching for the stars. Do you remember Pillsbury Space Food Sticks? In the late 1960s, the entire country was absolutely captivated by the Apollo space program. We would sit glued to our bulky television sets, watching the grainy black-and-white footage of astronauts, dreaming of the cosmos. And right there in the supermarket aisle, wrapped in shining foil, was our chance to taste the future. These chewy, cylindrical sticks came in flavors like chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel. But it was never really about the taste, was it? It was about the magic of imagination. When you peeled back that wrapper, you were no longer just a kid sitting on a suburban porch in Ohio or Texas. You were an astronaut, boldly venturing into the great unknown. Mothers loved them because they were marketed as a balanced energy snack. But we loved them because they were a tangible piece of the space race. We would trade them on the playground, comparing flavors and pretending our tree houses were lunar modules. That simple foil wrapper held the boundless optimism of an entire decade, a time when we truly believed that anything was possible, and the stars were just a grocery store trip away. And now, let us wander over to the dessert aisle and remember the absolute wonder of Jell-O 1, 2, 3. If you grew up in the 1960s, you know that making gelatin was practically a weekly household ritual. But this specific dessert was something entirely magical. It came in a single pouch, but when your mother whipped it up in the glass mixing bowl and poured it into those tall, elegant parfait glasses, a marvelous scientific transformation occurred right before your eyes. As it sat in the refrigerator, it mysteriously separated into 3 distinct layers. There was the creamy, cloud-like top, a light, mousse-like middle, and the solid, brightly colored gelatin at the bottom. Watching those layers form through the glass refrigerator shelf was like watching a magic trick. It felt so incredibly fancy, like a dessert you would be served in a high-end metropolitan restaurant. Yet it was right there in our humble kitchens. The texture was a delight. the soft foam giving way to the cool, sweet firmness below. Serving it after a Sunday pot roast made an ordinary evening feel like a grand celebration. It brought families together around the Formica kitchen table, spoons clinking against glass, sharing a simple, sweet moment that we assumed would last forever. Let us turn our shopping cart down the breakfast aisle, where the vibrant colors of cereal boxes reached all the way to the ceiling. Nothing brought quite as much joy to a Saturday morning as a fresh package of Post 10s. This was not just a box of cereal. It was a miniature buffet, a treasure chest wrapped in cellophane. It contained 10 tiny, individual boxes of different cereals, neatly arranged in a cardboard tray. Oh, the intense sibling negotiations that took place over that tray. The race to claim the Sugar Crisp or the Alpha-Bits before your brother or sister could grab them was a weekly tradition. But the best part was the ingenious design of the little boxes themselves. You did not even need a bowl. You would carefully perforate the front panel, open the wax paper lining, and pour the cold milk directly into the box. Sitting on the living room rug, watching Saturday morning cartoons while eating straight from that tiny cardboard container was pure bliss. It gave us a wonderful sense of independence. We were making our own breakfast, making our own choices. Those tiny boxes represented the simple, carefree mornings of our youth, accompanied by the familiar voices of animated characters and the comforting hum of the refrigerator in the background. Moving along, we simply must talk about a lunchtime revolution that changed the school cafeteria forever. I am talking about the original Hunt's Snack Pack puddings. Now, you might see plastic pudding cups today, but back in the late 1960s, these delightful treats came in actual aluminum cans. They had a sharp metal pull tab ring on the top. When you hooked your index finger through that ring and pulled, there was a very distinct, satisfying popping sound, followed by the rich, sweet smell of chocolate or butterscotch. Finding one of those little cans nestled at the bottom of your brown paper lunch bag, right next to your peanut butter sandwich, was like discovering a gold mine. Your mother had packed a little piece of love. Scraping the very bottom of the can with a metal spoon, trying to get every last bit of that incredibly dense, rich pudding, was a serious endeavor. The pudding itself was thick and indulgent, far superior to the watery versions of today. But it was that sharp aluminum edge and the ritual of opening it that made it feel so special. It was a tangible weight in your lunchbox, a sweet reward in the middle of a long school day, and a perfect example of how the simplest grocery items brought us immeasurable joy. Let us stroll past the beverage aisle and remember the incredibly colorful world of Funny Face drink mixes. During a time when Kool-Aid was the undisputed king of summer beverages, Pillsbury introduced these delightful packets sweetened with artificial sweeteners, aimed at mothers who wanted to give us less sugar. But we did not care about the health benefits. We cared about the characters. Goofy Grape, Rootin' Tootin' Raspberry, and Freckle-Faced Strawberry stared back at us from those brightly colored paper envelopes. Mixing a pitcher of Funny Face was a staple of hot July afternoons. You would stand on a step stool by the kitchen sink, watching the pale tap water instantly transform into a vibrant, glowing shade of purple or red as the powder dissolved. The sound of the long wooden spoon clinking against the sides of the tall plastic pitcher is a melody of summer. We would pour it into brightly colored plastic tumblers, the condensation dripping down the sides, and carry them out to the front porch. We would sit on the warm concrete steps, our tongues stained bright purple, sharing secrets and watching the neighborhood dogs run by. Those quirky characters and their sweet, fruity flavors are deeply woven into the fabric of our carefree summer memories. Now, let us pause for a moment to remember a savory snack that always seemed to appear when company came over. Do you recall Nabisco Swiss cheese crackers? These were not just ordinary crackers. They were baked to look exactly like tiny slices of Swiss cheese, complete with the little holes stamped right through the dough. They came in a distinctive red box that stood proudly on the pantry shelf. The texture was incredible, a crisp, sturdy crunch that gave way to a deeply toasted, tangy cheese flavor. Whenever your parents hosted a card game or neighborhood cocktail party, your mother would carefully arrange these little crackers on a glass serving tray, perhaps next to a block of sharp cheddar or some sliced summer sausage. If you were lucky, you got to sneak a handful before the guests arrived. We used to look through the little holes like miniature telescopes, playing with our food in a way that only children can. They tasted rich and slightly sophisticated, a perfect balance of salt and cheese. The satisfying snap of those crackers, accompanied by the sounds of adults laughing and the clinking of ice in glasses, forms a beautiful, warm memory of home entertainment in an era when inviting the neighbors over was a regular, cherished occurrence. Let us take another walk down the breakfast aisle to find a short-lived but deeply loved treasure called Kellogg's OK cereal. Introduced in the very early 1960s, this cereal was unique and fascinating. The pieces were shaped entirely like the letters O and K, made from toasted oats. For a brief, wonderful time, the box featured a burly Scottish character named Big Otis. Eating a bowl of OK cereal was a tactile and visual adventure. You would use your spoon to fish out specific letters, trying to spell words on the rim of your bowl before the milk made them too soggy. The crunch was hearty and substantial, sweet but not overpowering, leaving that wonderful, sugary oat milk at the bottom of the bowl for you to drink directly from the edge. It is amazing how such a simple shape could capture our attention so completely. Mothers appreciated that it was made of oats, while we just loved the playful nature of our breakfast. Even though it vanished from the supermarket shelves entirely too soon, replaced by brighter, sweeter alternatives, those of us who sat at the kitchen table on a chilly autumn morning, carefully spelling out our names in cereal, will never forget the comforting, wholesome crunch of those little oat letters. Let us think about the milkman and what we used to do with those cold glass bottles of milk sitting on the porch. That brings us to PDQ chocolate flavor beads. While other kids were using powder or syrup, if your family bought PDQ, you felt like you were living in the modern age. It came in a glass jar, and inside were these miraculous little granules of chocolate joy. When you poured them into a tall, cold glass of whole milk, they did not just sink and clump like powder. They floated, they swirled, and as you stirred, they dissolved into the richest, frothiest chocolate milk you could imagine. The smell when you twisted off the metal lid was intensely cocoa, earthy, and sweet. There was a specific sound, a delightful little rattle when you shook the jar. Making a glass of PDQ was an after-school ritual. You would burst through the front door, drop your heavy pile of school books on the table, and head straight for the refrigerator. That cold chocolate milk was the perfect companion to an afternoon of listening to records or doing homework at the kitchen counter. It was a small luxury, a jar of little chocolate jewels sitting in the pantry, making a simple glass of milk feel like a celebration of making it through the school day. And what about those nights when Mother needed a break from cooking from scratch? Let us talk about the absolute phenomenon of Libby's and other brands of TV dinners in their original segmented aluminum foil trays. This was the era when the television set became the center of the American living room. The ritual of the TV dinner was incredibly exciting. You would slide that thin cardboard box out of the deep freeze, admiring the picture of the perfectly cooked meal on the front. Then into the hot oven it went. The smell of roasting Salisbury steak, simmering peas, and bubbling apple cobbler would slowly fill the kitchen. But the best part was peeling back that burning hot foil lid. The steam would billow up, warming your face. The aluminum tray was perfectly divided, ensuring that the warm, buttery mashed potatoes never touched the sweet dessert. We would carry our hot metal trays into the living room, set up the wobbly wooden TV trays, and sit together as a family to watch the Ed Sullivan Show or Bonanza. It was not just convenience food. It was a cultural event, a merging of modern grocery store miracles with family entertainment, creating a cozy, glowing evening that we still look back on with immense fondness. Let us wander over to the snack aisle, where the crinkle of cellophane bags promised salty delights. Among the pretzels and potato chips, there was a brand that many of us adored, called Wampum Corn Chips. Long before the giant national snack conglomerates took over every shelf, regional and quirky brands like Wampum were the stars of our pantries. These chips were thick, hearty, and packed a massive crunch. They had a deep, roasted corn flavor and were heavily dusted with salt. The packaging featured a charming, if now outdated, cartoon character, and the name itself was fun to say. Opening a bag of wampum chips was an invitation to gather around. Whether you were sitting on a plaid picnic blanket at a neighborhood barbecue or huddled around a transistor radio listening to a baseball game, that red and yellow bag was passed from hand to hand. The rough texture of the chips left a wonderful salty residue on your fingertips. We would eat them alongside a thick, homemade onion dip, scooping up massive amounts until the chip inevitably snapped in half. Wampum chips represent a time when snack foods felt a little more homemade, a little more local, and completely tied to the laid-back, sunny afternoons of our 1960s youth. Now, let us recall a dessert that was as much a physical activity as it was a sweet treat. I am talking about the wildly entertaining Shake-a-Puddin' by Royal. This was an absolute stroke of genius for kids in the 1960s. It came with a special plastic shaker cup and a lid that you had to secure very carefully. You poured the pudding powder in, added cold milk straight from the fridge, popped the lid on, and then shook it with all the energy your little arms could muster. The sound of the liquid sloshing rapidly against the plastic walls of the cup, slowly thickening into a heavy, rhythmic thud as the pudding set, is a sound completely lost to time. It was an incredibly empowering experience for a child. We were making our own dessert without a stove and without our mothers hovering over us. We would shake it while dancing around the kitchen, turning a simple chore into a game. And then came the reward. Tearing off the lid to reveal the thick, creamy chocolate or vanilla pudding inside. We would eat it right out of the shaker cup with a long spoon, feeling immensely proud of our culinary creation. It was messy, it was loud, and it was undeniably fun. A perfect reflection of the boundless, joyous energy of childhood. Let us move along to the cookie aisle, a place of intense temptation and sweet aromas. There, sitting proudly on the shelf, were Burry's Gaucho peanut butter cookies. For many of us, this was the ultimate sandwich cookie. Two hearty, wonderfully crumbly oatmeal cookies hugging a thick, rich layer of creamy peanut butter. The cookies themselves had a distinct, slightly salty and deeply roasted oat flavor that perfectly balanced the sweet peanut butter filling. They came in a rectangular box with a cellophane wrapper that rustled loudly when you tried to sneak one late at night. The ritual of eating a Gaucho cookie was deeply personal. Some of us would twist them apart, carefully scraping the peanut butter off with our bottom teeth. Others would dunk the entire cookie into a tall glass of cold milk until it reached that perfect, fragile state just before it broke apart and fell in. Biting into one was a dense, satisfying experience that left crumbs all over your shirt. They were a staple in lunchboxes and picnic baskets alike. Burry's Gaucho cookies tasted like comfort, like coming home to a warm kitchen after playing outside all day. A simple, rustic sweetness that reminds us of the gentle care our mothers took to keep us happy. Now, let us find ourselves in the canned goods aisle, staring at the bright red and yellow labels of Chef Boyardee. While spaghetti and meatballs were standard, there was something incredibly thrilling about Chef Boyardee roller coasters. Introduced as a fun, novel meal, these were wavy, crinkle-cut pasta shapes swimming in a rich, sweet tomato sauce, often accompanied by those tiny, savory meatballs. Opening that tin can with a heavy, manual can opener was a test of strength. The metallic turn of the crank and the final pop of the lid released the tangy scent of processed tomatoes and herbs. Pouring the thick contents into a small saucepan and watching it bubble on the electric stove was a quick fix for a hungry child on a rainy Saturday. We loved the roller coasters because the wavy pasta felt entirely different in our mouths compared to boring, straight spaghetti. We would chase the pasta waves around the bowl, creating little stories and games before finally eating them. That sweet tomato sauce stained our lips and perfectly captured the essence of quick, convenient mid-century meals. It was a warm, reliable comfort food that made us feel cared for, even when dinner was served straight out of a tin can. Let us shift off focus for a moment to a soothing beverage that often signaled the winding down of the day. Do you remember the glass jar of Postum sitting on the kitchen counter? Long before the explosion of decaffeinated coffees and fancy herbal teas, there was Postum. It was a roasted grain beverage made from wheat bran and molasses, designed as a caffeine-free alternative to coffee. The powder looked like rich, dark soil, and when you spooned it into a mug and poured boiling water over it, a deep, earthy, slightly sweet aroma filled the air. It did not smell exactly like coffee. It had its own distinct roasted molasses scent that was incredibly comforting. For a child, being allowed to have a small cup of Postum with warm milk and a cube of sugar was a rite of passage. It made us feel like adults, sitting at the table with our parents as they discussed the news of the day. The gentle clinking of spoons stirring the dark liquid was the background music to quiet, intimate family evenings. Postum was not about rushing off to work with a jolt of energy. It was about slowing down, wrapping your hands around a warm ceramic mug, and sharing a quiet moment of reflection before turning off the lights and heading up to bed. Let us walk back down the bread aisle to revisit a true lunchtime staple that defined childhood for millions of us. I am talking about marshmallow fluff, specifically when it was used to create the legendary Fluffernutter sandwich. In the 1960s, that sweet marshmallow cream came in a solid, hefty glass jar with a metal lid. The process of making a Fluffernutter was practically an art form. You would take 2 slices of soft, spongy white bread. On one side, you spread thick, salty peanut butter. On the other, you used a butter knife to dig out a massive, sticky glob of bright white fluff. Spreading it was always a challenge. It clung to the knife, dragging the bread if you were not careful. The contrast of the savory, dense peanut butter against the airy, sugary, vanilla-scented marshmallow was nothing short of brilliant. Eating it meant getting sticky fingers and having the bread stick to the roof of your mouth. We would eat these sandwiches sitting on the grass during school recess, trading halves with our best friends. That heavy glass jar of fluff, sitting patiently in the kitchen cupboard next to the peanut butter, was a promise of sweet, sticky, carefree joy. A true testament to the simple pleasures of being a kid. Let us pause by the soup aisle, where the iconic red and white cans were stacked like bricks in a perfect wall. Among the chicken noodle and tomato soups was a truly unique variety that has sadly faded into obscurity: Campbell's Pepper Pot Soup. This was a thick, highly seasoned, incredibly hearty soup based on a traditional Philadelphia recipe. It contained tripe, macaroni, carrots, and potatoes, all swimming in a peppery, spicy broth. It was certainly an acquired taste, perhaps favored more by our fathers and grandfathers than by us children. But its presence in the pantry was an absolute constant. Opening a can of pepper pot released a sharp, savory, complex aroma that was completely different from the mild soups we were used to. It smelled like history, like a rugged meal from a bygone era. Heating it up on a brutally cold, snowy afternoon was a ritual of warmth and survival. Even if you were hesitant about the ingredients, watching an older family member savor a steaming bowl with a slice of heavily buttered bread was fascinating. The disappearance of pepper pot soup from the supermarket shelves marks the loss of those robust regional flavors that once stood proudly beside the standard, modern grocery fare. Speaking of hearty soups, let us talk about the ultimate companion to any chowder, the Nabisco Crown Pilot cracker. Especially if you grew up near the coast or in New England, these large, tough crackers were an absolute necessity. They were thick, incredibly sturdy, and only mildly sweet, almost like a cross between a biscuit and a hardtack. They came in a large, dignified box, and their texture was entirely unique. You could not just bite into a Crown Pilot easily. It required a bit of jaw strength. But their true magic was revealed when dropped into a steaming bowl of clam chowder or fish stew. Unlike delicate modern saltines that turn to instant mush, the Crown Pilot held its ground. It slowly absorbed the rich, creamy broth, softening just enough to be eaten, but maintaining a satisfying, chewy core. The ritual of breaking one of these massive crackers in half and watching it float on top of your soup is a deeply ingrained memory of cold, rainy evenings near the ocean. They tasted like tradition, like generations of families gathering around the table for a warm, humble meal. Losing the Crown Pilot cracker felt like losing a piece of culinary history, a sturdy anchor to our coastal heritage. Let us wander back to the preserves and take a moment to admire the sheer marketing genius of Welch's grape jelly in the 1960s. Specifically, the era when they packaged their thick, sweet jelly in collectible Flintstones glass jars. This was not just groceries, it was a prize. The jelly itself was dark purple, gelatinous, and perfectly sweet, the absolute star of our morning toast. But the real excitement began as the jar slowly emptied. We would eagerly scrape the sides with our butter knives, trying to finish the jelly as fast as possible. Once it was finally empty, our mothers would wash the jar in hot, soapy water, carefully peeling off the paper label. And there it was, a perfectly sized, beautifully decorated drinking glass featuring Fred, Barney, Wilma, or Dino. Having a complete set of these glasses was a point of pride in the neighborhood. You jetsy cold milk or funny-faced juice out of a heavy glass that used to hold your grape jelly felt incredibly resourceful and deeply satisfying. These jars turned a mundane grocery purchase into a treasure hunt, weaving beloved television characters into our daily meals and leaving us with cabinets full of colorful, nostalgic glassware. Let us pass by the coffee aisle again to remember the gentle morning rituals of our parents. There, next to the Maxwell House and Folgers, sat the iconic glass jars of Borden's Cremora. This non-dairy coffee creamer was a staple in almost every 1960s kitchen. Before the age of plastic containers, Cremora came in an elegant, uniquely shaped glass jar with a beautifully designed paper label. The sound of a metal spoon scooping out that fine, snowy white powder is a distinct auditory memory of childhood mornings. You would watch your father stir it into his steaming black coffee, fascinated as the powder spun into a swirling galaxy, instantly transforming the dark liquid into a warm, inviting caramel color. The scent of roasted coffee mixing with the slight sweetness of the creamer filled the kitchen with an atmosphere of quiet preparation for the day ahead. And much like the jelly jars, when the Cremora was gone, those sturdy glass jars were never thrown away. Our fathers used them in the garage to store nails, screws, and washers. Walking into a dimly lit workbench area and seeing dozens of those glass jars lined up on the shelves is a poignant memory of American thrift and practicality. Finally, let us end our grocery store journey at the large, humming metal coolers near the front of the store, where the glass bottles of knee-high soda waited for us. Oh, the beautiful, vibrant colors shining through that thick, ribbed glass. Grape, orange, and peach knee-high were the absolute peak of refreshment. We would eagerly hand over our hard-earned nickels to the grocer, grasping the cold, heavy bottle. Opening it required using the metal bottle opener bolted to the side of the cooler. The sharp, hissing sound as the metal cap popped off and clattered into the catch tray below was the ultimate sound of victory. The soda was intensely carbonated, the bubbles tickling your nose as you took that first, incredibly sweet, cold gulp. But the true magic of a knee-high soda was the social ritual. We would sit on the wooden bench outside the grocery store on a hot summer evening, swinging our legs, passing the time with our best friends. The heavy glass bottle felt substantial in our small hands. We did not rush to finish it. We savored every single drop, letting the sweet flavor linger on our tongues. That cold glass bottle of knee-high was not just a drink. It was a vessel of pure, uninterrupted joy, the perfect summary of a simpler, sweeter time. As we come to the end of our quiet stroll down these forgotten aisles, we must realize a beautiful truth. When we long for a glass of PDQ or a package of space food sticks, we are not just craving sugar or salt. We are deeply missing our youth. We are longing for that pure, innocent feeling of time stretching out endlessly before us. We miss the comforting presence of our parents in the kitchen, the laughter of our siblings fighting over a box of cereal, and the incredibly strong, unbreakable bonds we forged over a simple glass of cold soda. The foods may have vanished from the shelves forever, but the love and the memories wrapped up in those bright packages will live in our hearts for eternity. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please give this video a warm thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic trips down memory lane. It truly helps us keep these precious memories alive. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which of these 20 lost supermarket foods do you miss the absolute most? Or is there another childhood treat you wish you could taste just one more time? Please, leave your beautiful stories in the comments below. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep those wonderful memories close to your heart.